The Dark Angels are one of the oldest and most respected Space Marine chapters in the Imperium. They were the first legion, warriors who fought beside the Emperor before many other legions even existed. Their armor, victories, and ancient traditions make them look like perfect servants of mankind. But beneath that honor is a secret the chapter has spent 10,000 years hiding. During the Horus Heresy, part of the Dark Angels turned against the Imperium. These traitors became known as the Fallen. The rebellion shattered their homeworld of Caliban, scattered the Fallen across space and time, and left the surviving loyalists with a shame they believed could never be revealed. The Imperium knows that many legions produced traitors during the heresy. The Dark Angels could have admitted what happened and still remained loyal. Instead, they built their entire identity around secrecy. Only the highest ranks know the full truth. Ordinary battle brothers may serve for centuries without understanding what their own leaders are truly hunting. Whenever the chapter discovers signs of a fallen warrior, everything else can become secondary. Wars may be abandoned, Imperial allies may be deceived, witnesses may disappear. The Dark Angels can redirect forces, hide evidence, and refuse orders if they believe doing so will bring them closer to one of their lost brothers. That is why the Imperium has reason to fear them. The Dark Angels are not weak, corrupted, or unreliable in ordinary battle. They are terrifyingly effective. Their fleets are ancient. Their vaults contain weapons and technology from the earliest days of the Imperium. Their successor chapters form a hidden network, often called the Unforgiven, united by the same secret mission. Together, they possess the strength of far more than a normal chapter. The inner circle controls the truth. The Deathwing hunts the most dangerous enemies and protects the chapter's deepest secrets. The Ravenwing searches for the fallen across worlds, war zones, and forgotten systems. Every layer of the chapter is built around loyalty, but that loyalty is often directed inward before it is directed toward the Imperium. The darkest question is not whether the Dark Angels serve the Emperor. They do. The question is what they are willing to do to protect their secret. An Imperial commander may believe the Dark Angels arrived to save his world. A governor may welcome them as heroes. An inquisitor may think they are allies. But if any of them learns too much about the Fallen, the relationship can change instantly. The Dark Angels fear disgrace more than suspicion. They would rather let the Imperium doubt them than allow the full truth to escape their control. Their obsession has lasted so long that the hunt itself has become more important than the original crime. That is why even the Imperium fears the Dark Angels. They are loyal, but not transparent. They are powerful, but answer questions with silence. And somewhere beneath their fortress monastery, behind locked chambers and ancient oaths, the First Legion continues a private war that may matter more to them than any battlefield the Imperium asks them to defend. The Minotaurs are feared not because the Imperium doubts their loyalty, but because no one is certain who truly controls them. Unlike many Space Marine chapters, they do not behave like independent guardians of humanity. They appear more like a weapon kept in reserve, released only when someone powerful wants another Imperial force destroyed. Their origins are surrounded by secrecy, records conflict, their gene seed is uncertain. Even their early history is fragmented, altered, or deliberately hidden. What the Imperium does know is simple. When the Minotaurs arrive, they rarely come to negotiate. The chapter specializes in overwhelming violence. While many Space Marine forces divide into smaller companies and operate across multiple war zones, the Minotaurs often deploy in enormous strength. Entire formations descend together, supported by heavy armor, ancient war machines, and enough firepower to crush resistance before the enemy fully understands what is happening. That alone would make them dangerous. What makes them terrifying is who they are sometimes ordered to fight. The Minotaurs have repeatedly been used against other servants of the Imperium. Rebellious chapters, disobedient forces, and warriors who have angered powerful Imperial authorities can suddenly find themselves facing an entire chapter of Space Marines trained to destroy enemies just like them. The Minotaurs do not hesitate because their target wears Imperial armor. An order has been given, and that is enough. Their relationship with the High Lords of Terror has created endless suspicion. Many believe the chapter acts as their private execution force. When political leaders cannot openly control another Space Marine chapter, the Minotaurs can be sent to break it through direct force. They bring punishment without requiring public trials, long investigations, or uncomfortable questions. At the center of the chapter stands Asterion Moloch, a warrior whose reputation is almost as frightening as the Minotaurs themselves. He is described as enormous, heavily armored, and nearly impossible to kill. Some believe the name has belonged to several chapter masters. Others suspect Moloch is kept alive through technology, replacement, or methods hidden from the wider Imperium. Whatever the truth, even veteran Space Marines treat him as a serious threat. Moloch does not inspire through warmth or nobility. He inspires through certainty. When he walks onto a battlefield, it means the Minotaurs have not come to advise, reinforce, or protect. They have come to finish something. The chapter's brutality also separates it from more honorable Space Marine traditions. The Minotaurs do not seem interested in glorious duels or preserving the pride of defeated enemies. They attack command structures, destroy resistance, seize valuable relics, and leave opposing forces too broken to challenge Imperial authority again. This creates a dangerous question. Space Marines were designed to defend mankind, but the Minotaurs are often most useful when mankind's defenders need to be controlled. They are the threat behind the threat, the force Terra can send when even another chapter refuses to obey. That is why the Imperium fears them. The Dark Angels hide secrets, but the Minotaurs are something colder. They may be completely loyal, yet the loyalty appears to belong not to humanity as a whole, but to whichever authority holds their leash. And in an empire ruled through politics, fear, and hidden commands, few things are more dangerous than an entire chapter built to obey without hesitation. The Carcharodons are feared because they do not resemble protectors of humanity. They resemble predators released from the darkness between stars. Known as the Space Sharks, they spend much of their existence beyond the normal borders of the Imperium. Their fleets move through remote regions, forgotten systems, and empty voids where Imperial authority is weak or completely absent. They rarely appear without warning, and when they do, it is usually because something has already been marked for destruction. Their origins remain uncertain. Some believe they descend from the Raven Guard, while others suspect their bloodline carries darker influences. The chapter does little to answer these questions. Its warriors speak rarely, keep their traditions hidden, and display an isolation that makes even other Space Marines uncomfortable. The Carcharodons are pale, silent, and physically intimidating. Many cover their armor and skin with ritual markings resembling tribal scars, oceanic patterns, or the teeth of predators. Their presence feels less like the arrival of noble knights and more like the approach of something ancient that has learned to wear power armor. In battle, they prefer sudden and overwhelming violence. They attack from darkness, strike command positions, tear through resistance, and vanish once the target has been destroyed. Their methods are efficient, but there is a brutality to them that goes beyond normal military necessity. When the Carcharodons begin an assault, they do not always distinguish carefully between the guilty and those unfortunate enough to stand nearby. Rebellions can be crushed so completely that little remains to rebuild. Enemy leaders are executed, defenses are erased, and entire populations may be treated as acceptable losses if the chapter believes the mission demands it. Their reputation grew especially dark during the Badab War. The Carcharodons fought against the rebel Astral Claws and their allies, but they did so with such savagery that even loyal Imperial forces viewed them with suspicion. They were not interested in proving loyalty through ceremony. They proved it by leaving enemies broken beyond recovery. At the center of the chapter stands Tiberius the Red Wake, one of the most terrifying Space Marine commanders still active. He is described as enormous, even by Astartes standards, wearing ancient Terminator armor and fighting with weapons designed to tear armored opponents apart at close range. Tiberius does not need speeches to inspire fear. His silence is enough. When he enters battle, he moves with the patience of a creature that already knows its prey cannot escape. The Carcharodons also survive through a practice known as the Red Tithe. They claim resources, weapons, supplies, and sometimes human recruits from isolated Imperial worlds. The worlds they visit may have little power to refuse. To them, the arrival of the chapter can feel less like salvation and more like an ancient debt being collected. This makes their loyalty difficult to understand. They serve the Imperium, but they do not truly live inside it. They obey old commands, follow hidden traditions, and disappear for decades into regions where no Imperial official can observe them. That is why even the Imperium fears the Carcharodons. They are useful because they will enter places other chapters avoid and destroy enemies others cannot reach. But they are terrifying because their loyalty does not make them gentle. The Carcharodons defend humanity in the same way a predator might defend its territory, not through compassion, but through the complete removal of anything they consider a threat. The flesh tearers are feared because even when they fight for the Imperium, no one can be certain when their violence will stop. They are descendants of the Blood Angels and carry the same cursed gene seed. Like all sons of Sanguinius, they suffer from the Red Thirst and the Black Rage. But in the flesh terrors, those flaws burn closer to the surface. Their warriors are known for savage assaults, brutal close combat, and a hunger for blood that can overwhelm discipline. To the Imperium, this makes them both valuable and dangerous. When the flesh terrors are sent against orcs, tyrannids, traitors, or demons, their aggression becomes a weapon. They charge into battles others would avoid, break enemy lines through raw violence, and continue fighting long after ordinary soldiers would collapse. Few chapters can match them once they reach close range. But the flesh terrors do not always stop when the enemy is dead. There are records of Imperial allies being caught in their fury. Guardsmen, civilians, and even loyal soldiers have learned that surviving the enemy does not guarantee survival when the flesh terrors are nearby. Once the Red Thirst takes control, friend and foe can become little more than warm bodies standing between them and the next kill. This is why many commanders fear requesting their aid. A world may be saved from invasion only to discover that its rescuers have become another threat. Victory can end with hospitals full of wounded civilians, missing regiments, and witnesses who are ordered never to speak about what they saw. The chapter's reputation became so dark that some Imperial authorities questioned whether it should be allowed to continue. The flesh terrors were not accused of worshipping chaos, but their behavior made them look dangerously close to the monsters they fought. In the Imperium, loyalty is often judged by results. Yet even results become difficult to defend when allies are torn apart after the battle is already won. Their chapter master, Gabriel Seth, understands this better than anyone. He knows his chapter is dying. More and more brothers fall to the Black Rage, while every generation seems closer to losing control. Seth does not pretend the curse is noble. He treats it as a sentence the chapter must resist for as long as possible. That resistance is what makes him terrifying. Seth is not a commander trying to cure gentle warriors. He leads killers and forces them to remain soldiers. He knows exactly what his brothers can become, and he is willing to direct that horror toward the enemies of mankind before it destroys them from within. The flesh terrors are not traitors. That is what makes the fear surrounding them so uncomfortable. They remain loyal to the Emperor. They answer calls for war. They sacrifice themselves for humanity. But loyalty does not make them safe. The Imperium fears the flesh terrors because they represent a truth no commander wants to face. Sometimes the difference between a defender and a monster is only the direction of the charge. The Exorcists are feared because they fight chaos by allowing chaos inside themselves. To most servants of the Imperium, demonic possession is one of the greatest forms of corruption imaginable. A possessed human is hunted, imprisoned, or destroyed before the creature inside can spread its influence. The Exorcists follow a far more dangerous path. Their recruits willingly undergo possession as part of becoming full battle brothers. A demon is summoned and allowed to enter the initiate's soul. The warrior must then resist it, survive its presence, and force it back out. Those who succeed emerge hardened against future corruption, able to face the creatures of the warp with knowledge few loyal Space Marines could possess. The chapter has become one of the Imperium's most experienced forces in wars against demons and chaos. But the ritual does not always succeed. Some initiates cannot expel the entity. Their bodies survive, but their souls remain occupied by something from the warp. These failures become known as the Broken Ones. They are hidden away in sealed prisons far from the Imperium's attention, because their existence would raise questions the chapter cannot afford to answer. That secret is what makes the Exorcists so dangerous. Every battle brother represents a controlled victory over possession, but every broken one represents the possibility that the process can create exactly the kind of monster the chapter claims to destroy. The Exorcists are descended from the genetic line of Rogel Dorn and share the discipline associated with the Imperial fists. Yet their methods would appear deeply heretical to many Imperial authorities. They use forbidden knowledge, carefully controlled rituals, and direct contact with demons to build warriors capable of resisting the warp. To the chapter, the risk is necessary. A warrior who has already felt a demon clawing at his soul may recognize corruption faster than one who has only studied it. He knows the voice, the temptation, and the pressure. He can enter haunted fortresses, corrupted ships, and warp-touched battlefields without breaking as easily as ordinary soldiers. But the Imperium is built on fear of contamination. It does not always care whether forbidden power is controlled. It cares that the power was touched at all. An inquisitor who uncovered the full process might see the Exorcists not as loyal specialists, but as an entire chapter repeatedly gambling with damnation. One failed ritual could create a possessed Space Marine. Enough failures could turn a hidden prison into a demonic army waiting to escape. That is why even the Imperium fears the Exorcists. They may be loyal. They may be effective. They may save worlds that other chapters could not. But every one of their warriors crossed the line between man and demon before being trusted to defend humanity. And the Imperium can never be completely certain that everything which entered them truly left. The Marines Malevolent are feared because they show how cruel a loyal Space Marine chapter can become without ever turning to chaos. They still serve the Emperor, they still fight humanity's enemies, but they appear to believe that protecting individual human lives is almost irrelevant compared with completing the mission. Their origins are uncertain, and the identity of their gene seed remains unknown. What is clear is their reputation for aggression, arrogance, and extreme indifference towards civilian casualties. Other chapters may accept collateral damage when there is no alternative. The Marines Malevolent often act as though avoiding it would be an unnecessary inconvenience. Their most infamous action occurred during an orc attack on the Emperor's Deliverance refugee camp. Thousands of civilians and members of the ecclesiarchy were trapped when the orcs broke through the defenses. Instead of attempting a rescue, the Marines Malevolent bombarded the area with heavy weapons, killing orcs and hostages together. To them, the calculation was simple. The refugees were already surrounded. A direct assault would risk Space Marine lives. Destroying the entire position removed the enemy with greater efficiency. The civilians were not treated as people waiting to be saved. They were treated as acceptable losses. The Salamanders were horrified. Unlike the Marines Malevolent, the Salamanders are famous for protecting ordinary humans whenever possible. Their anger over the massacre created lasting hatred between the two chapters. The conflict showed that loyalty to the same Imperium does not mean sharing the same understanding of duty. The Marines Malevolent also have a reputation for treating allies with contempt. They rarely inspire trust, and their behavior has led to repeated demands for investigation. Yet the Imperium continues to use them because they are effective. When a position must be destroyed, a rebellion crushed, or an enemy erased, without concern for what remains afterward, the chapter can deliver results. That is what makes them dangerous. They are not secretly serving another master. They do not need demonic corruption to justify cruelty. Their brutality grows from a cold interpretation of Imperial logic. Humanity is worth defending, but individual humans are expendable. An Imperial commander fighting beside them may believe he has received powerful reinforcements. But if his soldiers become trapped, if civilians stand between the chapter and its objective, or if saving allies would reduce their military efficiency, the Marines Malevolent may decide that everyone in the target zone is already dead. The Imperium fears them because their loyalty offers no comfort. They may save a world while destroying the people who lived on it. They may win the battle and leave their allies wondering whether the enemy was the only threat. The Marines Malevolent prove that in Warhammer 40,000, a Space Marine does not need to become a traitor to become a monster. The Death Spectres are feared because they guard one of the darkest regions of the galaxy by methods that make ordinary Imperial cruelty look almost honest. They are loyal Space Marines, but their loyalty is distant, secretive, and shaped by the horrors of the Ghoul Stars. The chapter operates far beyond the safer heart of the Imperium. The Ghoul Stars are filled with dead civilizations, unnatural phenomena, hostile species, and threats that Imperial records barely understand. Entire expeditions have disappeared there, leaving behind only broken transmissions and abandoned worlds. The Death Spectres were placed in this region to make sure its horrors never spread deeper into human space. Their homeworld is Occludus, a cold and isolated planet hidden near the edge of the known Imperium. Beneath its surface lies the Sheriax, also called the Throne of Glass. The Chapter Master sits upon this ancient structure, using its mysterious power to watch over the Ghoul Stars and guide the chapter. But the throne slowly drains his life. The leader of the Death Spectres does not simply command fleets and armies. He is sacrificed, piece by piece, to an ancient machine whose true purpose remains unclear. While he remains bound to the throne, much of the chapter's daily command passes to a council and its senior officers. The chapter treats this slow death not as a tragedy, but as part of its duty. That same cold logic shapes how they treat ordinary humans. The Death Spectres do not view every Imperial population as something that must be protected. Human settlements near the Ghoul Stars can be abandoned if saving them offers no strategic value. A world may beg for help, but the chapter will judge whether its survival matters to the wider Imperium. If the answer is no, the Death Spectres may simply allow it to die. Their recruitment methods are even more disturbing. The chapter selects human populations based on their potential to produce future Space Marine candidates. People can be removed from isolated colonies and taken to controlled worlds where future generations will be tested for suitability. To the Death Spectres, this is not cruelty, it is preservation. Every recruit may become another warrior capable of holding back the nightmares beyond the Imperial frontier. Individual freedom means little compared with the survival of the chapter and the protection of the galaxy. Their appearance only strengthens their reputation. The Death Spectres possess pale skin and blood-red eyes, genetic traits connected to their Raven Guard lineage. Their black and white armor, silent behavior, and close connection to death make them resemble the ghosts their name suggests. In battle, they are disciplined and effective, but they fight with the mindset of warriors who have spent centuries staring into a region where normal rules do not apply. They are willing to sacrifice lives, worlds, and even their own leaders if doing so keeps the Ghoul Stars contained. That is why even the Imperium has reason to fear the Death Spectres. They protect humanity, but they do not necessarily protect humans. They guard the frontier,
but those living on that frontier may be treated as resources rather than citizens. The Death Spectres stand between the Imperium and things that should never escape the Ghoulstars. The terrifying question is how much of their own humanity they have already sacrificed to remain there. The Relictors are feared because they crossed a line most loyal Space Marines would never dare approach. They did not merely study chaos, they began collecting its weapons, carrying its artifacts, and using the power of the warp against the enemies of mankind. Their belief was simple: if chaos could be turned against itself, then refusing to use its tools was weakness. The chapter was originally known as the Fire Claws and was created to help guard the regions surrounding the Eye of Terror. Their fall toward radicalism began after they boarded a damaged space hulk and fought a champion of Tzeentch carrying a demon sword. When one of their librarians used that weapon to kill its owner, the chapter saw proof that corrupted relics could be controlled. With the support of a radical inquisitor, they began searching for more. Over the following decades, the Fire Claws gathered chaos artifacts from battlefields, ruins, and worlds near the Eye of Terror. Their armor and identity changed, and they became known as the Relictors. Hidden inside their fortress was a vault containing objects that most Imperial authorities would have ordered destroyed immediately. The Relictors believed strength of will could protect them. They did not see themselves as worshippers of chaos. They saw themselves as hunters using the enemy's own teeth. A demon blade could cut through demonic flesh. A cursed relic could expose hidden corruption. To them, destroying such weapons was wasting power that could save Imperial lives. The Inquisition saw something else. When the chapter's actions were discovered, Imperial authorities surrounded their fortress and forced them to surrender their relics. Their inquisitorial ally was executed, and the Relictors were sent on a century-long penance crusade. But even this warning did not change their beliefs. During the Third War for Armageddon, they searched for a fragment of a weapon once carried by Angron, rather than fully supporting the wider Imperial defense. Their obsession only deepened. During the 13th Black Crusade, the Relictors operated independently and continued hunting chaos artifacts. They eventually attacked an Inquisition force guarding a powerful relic and took it for themselves. At that moment, the Imperium no longer saw them as dangerous loyalists. It saw them as traitors. The chapter was declared excommunicate traitorous and nearly destroyed by the Grey Knights. Only a few hundred warriors were believed to have survived, disappearing toward the Eye of Terror. Whether they finally embraced chaos or continued trying to fight it with forbidden power remains uncertain. That uncertainty is what makes the Relictors terrifying. They may still believe they are loyal. They may still kill traitors, demons, and enemies of mankind. But every corrupted weapon they carry brings them closer to the thing they claim to oppose. In Warhammer 40,000, chaos rarely defeats its victims by forcing them to surrender. It convinces them they are strong enough to use it safely. The Relictors are feared because they prove that loyalty can become heresy without the warrior ever admitting he changed sides.